Oh, yeah, it's that time again. Mark Deal is here, and we're going to be doing some survey results reveals tonight. I'm so excited.
As am I, Steve, as am I. And thank you for everybody who has contributed, who has offered their time, their information, their valuable inputs to the survey this year. This is the time of year that we give back to you. Not only do we tell the industry what's happening amongst the community, but we also tell people how they can make more money. And it's probably most applicable to the people that actually take the survey. Because they get the influence of rates and everything. So yes, I'm excited to get this done and move on.
Yes. Let's make ourselves a little bit bigger. Folks, if you're in the chat, go ahead and type in where you're from. We want to see that you're here with us tonight. This is the annual reveal, and like I said, I'm excited. So Mark has got everything together for us where we're going to be able to go through some of the results comparative also to previous years. So not only are we going to give results of this year's survey, but we're going to be able to compare them to 2021, 2020. We had results in 2019 as well. This is our fourth annual podcast editor industry survey. Yes. Woohoo! Heidi's in the house. Gary's here. Yay. Where's Jennifer? Jay Longworth. Hey, who's from St. Louis? Because I'm from St. Louis. Yo.
It could be you.
That's not me. I didn't comment like that. Yeah, by the way, folks, if you're watching us on Facebook, please, to give permission for them to show your image and your name so we can see it, please go to StreamYard. Wait, that's not it. Which comment is it? No, this one. Here we go. Go to the URL at the bottom, StreamYard.com/Facebook, and that'll allow us to see your name and be able to share it with the world if you comment and if you say something interesting. And we're looking for comments. We're looking for people to give their opinions. Although these are statistical surveys, and Mark does a great deal at what he calls regression testing. Explain that.
I'll explain a little bit more later, but essentially it's the model, it's the math's way of trying to predict itself. And from there, we try to infer why are things working the way they are. So we as a community can learn how to do better. And I think we've actually been doing pretty good because, well, I don't want to give away so much of the good stuff. Steve, I think we should just start diving right into it.
Go for it.
All right.
You got this.
Okay.
Wait, I should probably play a little something, right?
Nice.
Bring it.
Will do. All right. Thanks for taking that better off. All right. This is the podcast editor survey results for 2022. This is our fourth year doing this. I think there was like an informal version of this 5 years ago, but to this format, to this depth, we've been doing it for 4 years, which gives us a lot of great insight. So let's dive right into it. One of the first things that we like to do, one of the first things that we like to show, since this is primarily a Facebook group, is the demographics and the breakups of that Facebook group and how that compares to those that have contributed to the survey. So the Facebook Editors Club is now about 8,200 members. Steve, what do you think about that number?
It keeps growing, and I don't know where all these people are coming from, but I'm so glad that they're there.
Well, there you go, right there. There's the countries that the folks are coming from. So 56% in the Facebook group are in the United States, 9% in the Philippines, yada, yada, yada. There you go. There's a chart right there. I don't need to read everything off. And that's PEC, the Podcast Editors Club. It's our Facebook group. And then there's also the survey results. So I'm doing the age breakdown. I'm doing the gender breakdown, trying to match the same format that Facebook does with the presentation of the survey there, just so we can kind of compare apples to apples, as well as look at the top countries. So this is about a little less than 2% of the entire Facebook group. So it is a small subset, but it seems somewhat representative as far as the age and gender and country breakdown. So is it representative? Maybe, maybe not. We will see. All right. Survey results. Now, this is something that everyone likes to see. And a lot of people want to go look at this information and then they run. So if you got to run, here's here's the information you're probably looking for, right? So we ask, how long does it take you to edit a 60-minute recording? And we're talking like basic noise reduction and leveling, mix it down to an MP3, and yeah, an hour of an hour of work there. Hey, Steve, can you get our videos off of to get cameras right? Thanks. That way people can see more of the juice, and less of me.
Yes.
So we asked, how much do you charge in US dollars? And price has been going up year over year over year from 2019, 20, 21, and now 2022. Yes. Thank you, everyone. You're charging more for your work, and you're certainly worth it. And the time that it takes you to do it. We are 1 minute quicker than we were last year. And last year we had a big uptick, and I thought maybe it's all these new tools that we're trying to use. Well, now we're getting better at it. Since our price has gone up and the time that we take to do it has remained about the same, our effectively hourly rate has gone up about $63 per hour. Thank you. across all this survey. And again, that's about 144 people in 2022. Steve, I'm loving these sound effects, man. It really kind of helps cut the ice and everything off of me. So that I appreciate. And people love to see who's using what and how much experience they have, what kind of other services they're offering. So here you go. The main DAW, Adobe Audition, of course. Now we had a couple of surprises. For example, Hindenburg is now up to 13%. I think that was 9% last year. So good job with the folks at Hindenburg, and good job for the folks like Brian Ensminger, who's bringing the Hindenburg knowledge and love to the world there. The cumulative editing experience and getting paid to do it. Essentially, we show two bars: how long you've been editing and how long you've been getting paid to edit. And of course, people have been editing longer than they have been professionally editing. And what we see this year over last year is, people are kind of, as I am as well, are getting older, more experience. So it almost seems like we've got the same type of subset of the group, but everyone has one more year, and it's kind of moved them over into the next bar. Number of extra services. There's the breakdown right there, a little Pareto of how many people are offering services above editing. Of course, we asked that question and many more. And off to the bottom right there, the extra services offered. Got a lot of people doing audiograms, short video teasers, show notes writing, all those things you could see there. And thank you, Steve, for making that full size so people can see that.
And just to interrupt you for a second, Mark, we're going to take the slide off real quick. I wanted to let everybody know we will be making these slides available to everyone towards the end of this. So if you can't see everything right now because you're looking on your phone, or if you're looking on a screen that's just not showing you the detail, don't you worry. We're going to get you those details shortly.
Certainly. And in fact, those industrious people who have gone online into the Podcast Editor Academy probably saw that we posted these results early this morning. So this is our official video reveal. But those slides are there. And of course, this is something that we don't lock away. This is too important to make it for only Academy members. So we give it to everybody. So thank you for that, Steve, including all the slides.
Oh, and we do have some questions. Do you want me to hold them till the end, or do you want to take them now?
You know what? We can take them now.
Yeah, okay. Because Carrie wants to know what do 12 extra service? Oh, who does 12 extra services? Okay, I'm sorry, I read that wrong.
Yeah, it looks like about 2% of the people. Can you put the slides back up there, Steve?
Yes, absolutely.
There we go. It looks like very, very few people are doing 12, like 1%. So there you go. About 1 or 2 people are doing 12 services, which I kind of get Carrie's point, right? If you're doing everything, if your focus is on everything, then your focus is on nothing. It's not really a focus.
Yeah. I mean, voiceovers, believe it or not, I'm actually doing it for one client. It wasn't part of my agreement, but I ended up doing his disclosures, which I'm like, okay, all right. Mm-hmm. Hey, by the way, we've got somebody coming in from France. Hello. We've got people here from Denmark. I love it. Of course, Heidi's from Anchorage. I'm surprised I don't see somebody here from Nashville yet.
Well, we certainly have the global podcast editors watching, which is great because, this is a global survey. Yeah. that having been said, here's a little sneak peek of what to come. What affects rates? You notice that some of the bars turn green, like Hindenburg and Pro Tools and guest interview booking, and some of the bars turn red, like those that have been freshly editing 1 to 3 years. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but this is an indicator of things that are impacting and influencing rates. And we'll get more to that in a bit. There's 2 extra slides that we did not show last year, but I thought, hey, is common questions within the Podcast Editors Club. So let's go ahead and show them. And that's the number of active clients. How many people have how many clients, right? I did 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I grouped 5 and 9 there and 10 plus, as well as how long are people editing out? Like how much time are they actually spending doing the work? And I'm also presenting how long are they spending developing the work, working on developing their business. So for example, those that spend less than 10 hours, that's about 32% of those actually editing, and 80% spend less than 10 hours developing their editing business. And as you can see from there, and of course, like before, we've got some influences. No surprise, the people that have more clients are probably making more per hour. Also, those that seem to have a good focus, those that edit less than 20 hours a week, you know what? Maybe they are pricing their services so they pick the best clients for them so they can edit less for more money. At least that's my guess. And so we're going to get into some of that math.
They're the big winners.
Yep. Winner, winner, winner. Chicken dinner. Okay, so enough about averages and tables, because as I like to say, Excel pivot tables are for losers. We use regression analysis. Essentially, some things help or hurt the desired outcome. Some of the things we don't have enough data on, although we try to see what has a statistical influence and what doesn't. And honestly, a lot of outcomes can't be predicted. So we try to use this as a guide, and we definitely encourage you to use this information and explore your own reality. If you're asking questions of us, that is great, and we will do our best to answer questions. But we also challenge you to ask questions of yourself. Why am I doing it this way? Could I be doing it another way? What would my business look like if I took some of this information and tried to edit faster? If I tried to charge more money, will it work out? And I think a lot of you, if you've been waiting for permission to do so, tonight is your permission.
There you go.
There we go. So we had 144 editors survey. There were 141 factors created, over 20,000 data points. Unfortunately, only about 23 factors have been found to predict the effective rate, and only 40% of the variability is accounted for. So what do I mean by that? 60% of everything that's impacting the effective rate, I couldn't find a predictor for. It makes sense, right? I'm trying to model global human behavior to do a service, to do a job. I was hoping I could get to some more accuracy, but this year I really couldn't. But we did our best. Now, here's a couple of other surprises we have. Here are the factors that were not statistically significant in impacting the effectively hourly rate of editors. And these are things that impacted years past, such as age really hasn't been a factor, but gender certainly was. So was education, and so was location. Those were not statistically significant this year. And shocker, right, Steve? Yeah.
Shocking.
Okay, I wanted to explain a little bit of what we mean by this regression testing, right? So these are averages, as I showed you before, the averages of all the price, average of all the time, the average of the rate. But what we're doing with this regression analysis, we're going beyond the average of all. And essentially, the model tries to build a formula to predict how much the individual editors are making, not the group, how much they're making per hour and what affects their rate. So for example, the average hourly rate was $63. The regression was saying it's more like $100 an hour, but there were a lot of people that had negative factors. So if you put in all the factors across all the editors, of course you get $63. But we're not going to focus on the average anymore. Now we're going to focus on you, the individual editor. What impacts your rate? And in fact, some of the biggest impactors that were negative that brings that $100 hour down to the average of everybody. I think all of, let's just go to that slide. Pretty much all but 11% of the community are impacted that. And that was, I always mispronounce this, ethnicity. How did I do, Steve? Did I mispronounce it?
You did better than I did.
I did
you
better.
did better than I could. Yeah.
I did better than I did last year. So if you identified as white or Caucasian, you made 42% less per hour, which honestly, I think was a shocker to a lot of people, because you hear the opposite. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case. And you know what? We felt a little bit of this 2 years ago when we first looked into gender and found out that that people that identified as women were making more. I had a story around that, and I thought it's because they did a better job of saying that, hey, I am a female editor. This is my brand. This is who I am. And maybe that's happening to 82% of everybody surveyed that identified as white or Caucasian, which was interesting. Asian or Pacific Islanders are making even less than that, 69% less per hour. Now, I did, as we've done before, I tried to look at the US, UK, Canada, Philippines, all the different countries, try to lump countries together as English speaking versus non-English speaking. Those weren't statistically significant, but in this case, if you identified as Asian or Pacific Islander or white or Caucasian, that was an impactor, not so much your country of origin or the language you spoke, which was interesting. So the other 11% in the survey didn't see this dip. So if you didn't identify as white or Caucasian or Asian or Pacific Islander, Steve, what do you think about this?
See, I'm sitting there looking at this. I'm like wondering why it's so different from previous years, and the data doesn't lie.
Yeah, last year, this is the first year that that it's pointed to ethnic. And I'm always trying to hit that word. I'm always
Carrie's gotcha.
It.
Ethnicity.
Yes, thank you, Carrie. I obviously I need some help here with this one. We looked at this and we were finding that it was location, and maybe this time because location dropped out, but this was a little stronger. And I think because this is stronger, it booted out location. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting.
I will say that we have seen a huge influx of new members coming in from outside the country. So I'm wondering if the people who are filling out the survey this year may be a little less America-centric and a little more overseas, which could impact some of the numbers here.
I tested for that, but I couldn't really find an indicator. Like before, the US and a lot of times the UK and sometimes Canada would have like a strong indicator, like, hey, here's your adder if you're in the US, or if you're in the UK, your adder is even more. But yeah, it broke down to this. All right, let's move beyond this.
Data doesn't lie.
It doesn't lie. It kind of gives us an indication of what's happening, and it's up to us to ask the questions why this is and what we can do with this information to learn. So when we found out the women were making more, we thought our hypothesis was that maybe they are doing a better job of being different. Maybe the opposite is being shown here to be true. All right, let's move on. No surprise here. Effective rate by the number of clients. Those with 5 or more clients made 25% more per hour. And when you look at their hourly effectively rate, they were charging as much as other people, but they were doing the work much faster. And that makes sense, right, Steve? These people are,
For me, once I got 6 or 7 clients, I mean, more of my attention was focused on doing the job and doing it better. Of course, I was seeking out ways to be able to do the things a little more efficiently, rather than when I first started, I was just doing what I had done as a podcaster, which is edit my own show. But then I had to learn how to do things better and learn how to do them faster as well.
Right. And I indicated this before, the time spent editing, those that spent 10 hours or less a week editing made 22% more. And those that spent a little bit more time, 10 to 20 hours a week editing, made 17% more. And then when you made more than, if you spend more than 20 hours a week editing, your rate was at everybody else's. And this made sense to me as I was thinking about it, like, those, and I kind of alluded to it earlier. These people are picking and choosing who they want to work with, and they are kind of staying at that effective time that they like to work. And luckily, it looks like it's a majority of those surveyed. We got a third editing 10 hours or less, and we've got 42% 10 to 20 hours. Not too bad. Editing experience, Steve. We've seen this before. And I think I have a narrative around this. Those that have been getting, those that have been getting paid to edit for less per hour. And yes, this does mean if this is your first year editing, you're getting paid more. On average, you're getting paid more than those that are editing 1 to 3 years when you correct and take into account all the other conditions. And our hypothesis was that at 1 to 3 years, you're starting to learn all you don't know. Everything about compression and normalization, and heck, Steve, in the Podcast Editor Academy, we have over 300 lessons, courses, modules, videos, scripts, tons of stuff. And although we've done a great job in organizing that, I think sometimes people, after they've been editing for, professionally for 1 to 3 years, maybe they discount their price because they're starting to discount all the things that they don't know. Stop doing that.
I could only say that for me, I wasn't raising my rates as fast as I probably should have. I know that there's been a lot of discussion on that lately. Mm-hmm. Hopefully everybody is rectifying that. But yeah, I couldn't figure out why that 21% less an hour, that just doesn't make sense to me. But interesting data. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And if Carrie wants an answer, did I get into toy? No, I'm just playing audio through loopback from Audacity.
By the way, Audacity isn't going to help you your hourly effective rate, Steve.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that the next slide?
Or is it? Oh, it is the next slide. Oh, see, I'm not even looking at my multiple screens here. Yeah, those that use, by the way, nice lead in, Steve. Those that use Pro Tools as their main DAW made 28% more per hour. And that's 13% of those surveyed. And this makes sense. Typically, Pro Tools users are folks that go to music school, that are learning how to create all these musical compositions and everything. So they have not only a wealth of knowledge of Pro Tools and are able to get things done a little faster, but they're also able to charge more money.
Yeah. Plus, they've got a lot of them have experience working in radio, music recording studios. So they've got that credibility built in by working in the industry, at least a related industry. So I think that's why Pro Tools is almost always up there for that.
Yeah, it always has been. Maybe they're paying off student loans or whatever. They have a community around them that says, hey, you should get paid more for what you do. So they do. But what I am excited to see is those that use Hindenburg as their main DAW made 24% more per hour, almost as much as Pro Tools users. Yes, thank you. And it turns out they were just as efficient as all the other editors, including the Pro Tools editor, but they were quoting more for their total price, which impacted and raised their rates. So, great job with the folks at Hindenburg. I like to thank, or I like to think that maybe it has something a little bit to do with Hindenburg supporting everything that we've done in the Podcast Editors Club, Podcast Editors Conference, and the Academy for the last few years. And also I got to give a shout out to my guy Brian Ensminger. He's doing a great job there with the Hindenburg users, showing people how to not just use the DAW, but how to use it in their business. So good for him, and good for all of us. And
those community support groups are very important.
Definitely. Yeah, and the other 74% using the other DAWs, like Steve and his Audacity, didn't get that pay bump.
Wah, 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 wah.
Well, Steve, you got the biggest factor. We all know what that is, and we'll share that with you in a moment. So services offered, last year, services played a very big part in your hourly effective rate. And it's not so much that, hey, I add all these services so that, my rate is going up. But those that have those services offered, like, oh, you just want me to do basic editing? Sure, I can do that, but I charge more than the person down the street that only offers one or two things, because I do that, but I also do all this other stuff. And last year, and of course those survey results are still available and always will be, there's a lot of services that impacted the rate. This year, it is guest interview booking. And that has remained ever since we've been asking about services. Guest interview booking has been a positive leading impactor on that. Those that do this, that offer it, make 24% more per hour. And they're quoting more for total price. And 1 out of 5 editors offer this. And Steve, I think this is a great service for editors to offer if they can, if they know how to do it, if it's something that they can manage within their process. Because think about it. If you're editing for an interview-based show and you're helping them with their guests, there's less chance of them pod fading, right?
Yeah.
So you get more work. So not only are you quoting more for your total price, but maybe you don't have to hunt for clients as frequently as others that may come and may go.
Yeah, and I think it's important. It's important to note here too, for everybody who's watching, the prices that we're basing these percentages on is on the editing piece. So just because you offer more services, you should be charging more money, but certain services that you offer should be worth more to a client than others. So a more valuable service, you should be able to charge more than a less valuable service, like, oh, I upload to your media host. Mm-hmm. That's going to affect it's going to impact your rate. But the guest services, you think about when you're providing guest services to your client, you're not just doing the backroom stuff. You've got to be a teammate with your podcaster, with your client. That's a much closer relationship. You're interacting more often. You should be charging more and getting paid more for all of your things that you do.
Right. And honestly, if I'm to hire an editor and I've got, editor A and editor B, not to commoditize our great community here, but you've got 2 editors and one offers guest interview booking services. Even if I don't select that service that they offer, you know what? I would anticipate and I would expect that they would probably charge more for their base editing rate just than the person that doesn't offer that. Just like as, somebody in the past I was doing, coaching, consulting. So it makes sense. It makes sense. So if you're looking at offering an additional survey additional service, take a look at guest interview booking and see if it can fit within your portfolio of services. Or if you want to take something off and add something on, maybe this is it. Okay, and this is the biggest impactor. It always has been in years past. And of course, Steve's big on this. He loves that loop back, ladies and gentlemen.
That might be a little annoying. Sorry. Yeah. No, but this is where it's like, okay, really? Hold on. Suspense? Yes.
It's a little weird on this one. So, as you would expect, those that have gone to an industry-specific conference, a conference not about podcasting, but in their industry and niche that they choose to focus on, they made 73% more per hour, almost double the rate, and that's 7% of those surveyed. Now, what was interesting is those that keep going to those industry-specific conferences didn't see that bump. So for Steve, can I use you as an example?
Please do.
So, as we all know, Steve is the editor for the personal finance community. And he goes to FinCon every year, according to this survey. Yeah, you go once, you get that big pay bump. But then if you keep going back, you lose that pay bump. So I'm wondering why that is. I don't have an answer for that. But obviously industry-specific conferences help out the rates. But are people doing something or not doing something as they continue to go back and that lose that? Are they hanging out, vice developing work? I don't know.
Yeah, you pulling out that data just makes me feel like I got smacked in the face. It's just, that's so, yeah. I mean, you go once, great.
Right.
You go multiple times, not so much. Well, you got more data coming up here in a second, too, about conferences and attending.
And like I said at the top of this, use this as a guide to explore your own reality. Please ask us questions. And sometimes in years past, we were clueless on something, and then it was the community. It was you that told us why that is. Mm-hmm. So we appreciate your feedback, your insight, and your challenging questions, so we can all learn together. So other conferences. So those that have gone to a conference other than Podcast Movement or Podfest Media Expo or She Podcast Live once, you made 38% less per hour. So as you're going to these, what I'll call like micro niche podcasting conferences, you think that's a fair term, Steve?
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Okay. Something like that. Yeah. You made less per hour. And then if you go many times, you still make less, but not as bad, if that makes sense. So essentially, you make 22% less per hour. Steve, why do you think this is?
I have a slight theory, and I'd love to hear the chat if you agree with me or if you come up with your own opinion as to why this is. But over the years, there have been more conferences, and over the years, we've attended more quantity of the podcast centric conferences. Over the years, the competition has grown. We're trying to get people from our community to go to conferences because that's a great place to network, to meet potential clients. But of course, we're bringing more competition to we're bringing more competition to the yard. So that might be one reason why. I don't know. It's not a big impact, I think, but I think it has something to do with it.
Well, I'm gonna share my bias here because I really like Podcast Movement, Podfest, and She Podcasts Live, the big three conferences, and this isn't the case with all the small conferences, but it seems like they'll gravitate or hold on to like a keyword tricky phrase, a buzzword within the community, like monetize your podcasts or something like that. Whatever the new shiny object of the week is, and we'll have a. Again, this is I'm showing my bias here, but will be more about the shiny object than say, the growth of the industry, and that's my guess.
Okay, I'll unmute myself and agree with you.
That mute button's tricky. You know how to use the loop back, but the mute button is another thing. So, social media for everybody. Essentially, if you're using, it seemed within those survey that editors aren't great at social media, or maybe social media is a distraction from what our zone of genius is. So, for example, 72% of those surveyed use LinkedIn either weekly or rarely, and they're making 24 to 28% less per hour. And I dove into that particular metric, and it turns out that those editors were spending more time editing the same work scope than others do. So it's something about the LinkedIn weekly or rarely users. They take longer to edit. And
so we should spend less time editing and spend more time on LinkedIn, is what you're saying, daily.
No, what I saw from social media, although there was a bit of an indicator with those that use Instagram daily, but that dropped off in statistical significance, so it didn't show up in here. And you see Snapchat weekly, that was only 2% of the surveyed, but it's so strong that that popped up. Just question yourself, what you're doing on social media. So when we first included social media, we were thinking, hey, are you using social media to market yourself? And maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but it seemed like those that are using at least these social media channels at this frequency were making less per hour. And and those they're using Snapchat weekly, they quote much less for their total price.
That doesn't surprise me.
Okay,
it doesn't surprise me. It's like, hello.
And this is a slide I love putting together. And we talked about effective rate impact by business operational confidence. Mark, what are you talking about? Business operational confidence. So, if, for example, outbound marketing. This entire top row, outbound marketing would equal 100%. You've got people that have no confidence or no proficiency in outbound marketing. It was 19% of those surveyed. 44% had a bit, 31% had a bit more, and only 6% of those are mastered. So this kind of gives us almost a heat map of where the editing community fit within these various business operational confidence. Now, this is close, but doesn't align completely with one of the things I'm in love with the business model map. But this covers a lot of ground that map does. So I want to show where people believe themselves to be. So if you told us in the survey that, hey, I feel I've mastered outbound marketing, then you're over there in mastered outbound marketing.
We
But don't,
probably need to stop. In fact, it's funny. I was about to interrupt you, and then Patrick Keller is going to do it for us. He wants to understand what outbound is, and then I'd like to kind of give an example so that people understand as we're going through these. What would an example be of outbound marketing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's outbound marketing. For example, that would be like running your website, right? So having a website, or perhaps it's a podcast guest strategy. To be a guest on other people's shows to talk about your editing services, or how much you love the podcast industry, or maybe some of your insider knowledge of the podcasting industry. So that would be outbound marketing, and that's a great feedback. I probably should have put that on that slide a little bit better by us having those so big. Inbound is more the inbound sales. Like, all right, I'm talking to somebody one on one. Can I convert that conversation into a sale? So as people are coming to me and I'm having those one-on-one sale conversations.
We could make it probably a generalization of saying outbound is you going out there and finding clients, versus inbound is you're having conversations with somebody, whether they got your contact information or somebody else or whatever. It's a very simplistic comparison. Would you agree? No, you don't look
Sure.
convinced. Okay.
No, sure. And really, I think a lot of that is kind of a gauge R&R of how we worded the question and what people interpreted it as, and then voted on it. So because of that, we may have lost some statistical confidence in some of these pieces, and then the other ones we may not have. So maybe that we lost some sight on that because we could have been clear in the survey, and that's.
Yeah, it was just made it really long, and especially in that section.
Yeah.
So we'll find a better way of doing it, but
yeah, maybe like a visual map of a business, if there was such a tool. We'll figure it out.
We have that in the academy.
Yeah, and we can throw it in here. All right, so and then we've got discovery calls. Sending out proposals and contracts. Your ongoing client communications. How effectively you can work with teams and delegate work to teams, and then collections, as far as if you've got outstanding,
how you get paid.
Yeah, how you get paid. Sorry,
because I'll tell you what, I was mastered collecting until I went to QuickBooks, and then it just all fell apart. So my answers would be different this year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. We looked at some of these, the confidence. Steve, go ahead and take us off the screen. Mm-hmm. We don't need to be on there. So the inbound, as you would, or at least as I would expect, those on the left side would have more of a negative impact, and those on the right side would have more of a positive impact. But there were a couple things that surprised us. Say, for example, discovery. Those that said, "Hey, I've got no proficiency at all at hosting discovery calls, discovery meetings, and emails. I'm really bad at it. I'm not proficient at all." Well, it turns out they were getting paid 29% more per hour to edit. And I dove into that data, and it turns out they're very effective at editing. So this subgroup, they spent their time learning how to edit quickly, vice hosting these discovery calls.
I would say that's a really good, applaud to the introverts who are good at editing. How's that?
I like
that's
that.
where they're living.
Yeah. Hey, my people. Yeah. And then, so I'll just go ahead and leave this up here, Vice, talking about each and individual one. But
no, go through them. I really would like to dig into these individually, at least the ones you've got highlighted.
Yeah. So, outbound, outbound marketing and inbound sales. If you can get some proficiency at inbound sales and have some proficiency at outbound marketing, but always know that you are somewhat proficient, not so much as mastered, or even, working towards mastery, but knowing that you're not there yet. Always know that there's something more to know, and be cognizant of that. And I think if you approach various things in business with that, knowing that like, hey, I can learn a little bit of proficiency in this, but I don't need to master it.
Mhm.
That way, I get out of the slump, get out of the hole, and but it keeps me challenged, and I'll learn where to put my time. And I think using that across all of these would impact and help. Client communications, no surprise there. The more and luckily, many editors thought that they were pretty proficient or had complete mastery over client communications. So that's 85% of those surveyed, a vast majority, say that yes, I'm very good at communicating with my client, and I hope proactively, not just reactively. But it turns out you're making more per hour. So good job, everyone.
Yeah, if you ask me, that is one of the most important things you can do as an
Mm-hmm.
editor is just communicate well. That's great customer service.
Mm-hmm.
Your client is going to love you. They're going to know and trust you better because you're letting them know what's up.
Yep. And teamwork there. You see those that have a bit proficiency were making 11% less per hour, and that makes sense because those that have no proficiency, they're doing this as a solo operation, solo gig, and that's completely fine. And they're not getting that impact, that hit. But those that are becoming a bit proficient, they're trying to put their SOPs, their standard operating procedures, and how to share work amongst the teammates and yeah, they're getting a bit of a hit on that. But those that have more proficiency or have mastered it, they don't have that hit, but they can scale, which is great. And collections, you always hear horror stories, or at least maybe they stand out when people talk about not getting paid. But generally, amongst the survey, everyone says they have some proficiency at collections, and it's not really impacting their rates. The same holds true with contracts, which is interesting because I was aware of a couple of projects that was focusing specifically on editing contracts and collections to help people out with those various aspects of their business. Well, according to this, it wasn't really needed.
Well, in this world, I think we're still growing. I think it's still becoming an
Yeah.
industry where contracts are not necessary, especially when you've got people who are, I don't know, maybe there is a contract that you sign when you're working with somebody on Fiverr, but then you translate that to somebody who is used to working with a podcast editor in Fiverr, and then they find somebody, maybe that editor does not have a contract. They're still going to work with them.
Mm-hmm.
So the editor is then not proficient in contracts. But then collections is something that it's kind of, I don't know. There's only like really two things with invoicing and collections. One, you send an invoice to your client and they pay it, but then the follow up and stuff is where I think the confidence falls into place. So, Mark, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So, collections, it's not a complicated thing. It's kind of like you do it or you don't, and you get paid on time or you don't. And how do you follow up?
Yeah, I think people are choosing to work with the people they like working with, and I think the clients are choosing the editors that they like to work with. And then those that don't really like working with anyone, as you say, Steve, the introverts, that's okay. There's a place for you. There's editors that will subcontract out, and editors that will white label their services up, so everyone can find the work that they like, whether it is scoping it out and doing contracts or discovery calls or just editing it. Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break and take a question from the audience. Patrick Keller wants to know who in the group has the most experience editing professionally. So those in the chat, put in how many years you have been editing professionally, meaning you get paid to edit for somebody else. I'd be interested to hear that as well. I know Carrie and I started about the same time. Trying to think who else I've seen in the group that would have been going since like 2016. But go ahead and put in how many years you've been editing professionally in the chat as Mark gets ready for the next slide. What is the next slide? Is it? Oh, this is so great. Ready? Ooh. It's the tornado graph or whatever you call it. Mark, are you muted? I think Mark is muted.
I was muted there, Steve.
Wow, I was all ready.
I know.
Oh, wait. So we need clarification on that question that I posed, which Dave Jackson wants to know. Wait, it just switched on me. Full time or part time? How many years professionally was the question? It doesn't mean full time or part time. So if you've been doing it for others professionally, how
Yeah.
many years? And now that I
And
see Dave is in there, I think I lose.
but that's a great question though, because we did ask people not only how much time they spend editing and how much time they spend working on developing their editing business, but we also asked the percentage of revenue. Is 0 to 25% of your revenue come from editing, or is it 75 to 100? So those were part of the 20 some thousand data points that we had, and it turns out, it didn't matter. It wasn't so much those that are making, a quarter of their revenue from editing, and maybe they're doing coaching or social media or whatever it is, or those that are doing, much more, or maybe have a day job. Yeah, those weren't really impacting rates. So yeah, I know Dave was trying to elaborate on your question, Steve, but within regard to the survey, it didn't really matter.
Right, but it was actually a question from Patrick Keller. Want to see who's been editing longer, and Dave Jackson, you think would have the longest time editing for other people, but I think Sandy Levy Smith wins because she was doing it professionally for 37 years, just not podcasts. But yeah, podcast editor for 2 years, so she's got a lot of experience in the audio field. What was the question, Pat? Do you know who? Okay, so Patrick Keller's original question: do you know who the group has had the most experience editing professionally? And it didn't say editing podcasts, so I guess Sandy gets she gets the win. She gets the win in the column. Okay, sorry, Mark. Sorry for the detour. Let's get back to
That's all
tornado
right.
graph. Woohoo!
Yeah. So
Wait, hold on. Ready? It's the most fun you can have with a chart.
Yeah, especially those that have to build it. These are all the factors that are impacting the rate, both positively and negatively. So those that have attended one industry conference, are making 73%. As we said before, that little bar underneath of it, that's kind of the standard deviation. So as they vary wildly, it can be much more plus or minus of that number. Or if it's a small error bar, then it's a pretty tight correlation. So I'll just go ahead. We've already talked about all these, but this is everything together. And I did a better job of elaborating, such as like the no proficiency at discovery meetings and emails by just saying, facilitating the meetings there on the last one.
I do like that you are showing that deviation underneath because you can see the Snapchat Weekly, which is the second to last thing on the graph.
Yeah.
Wide variation, but then if you look closer in towards the center where you got outbound more, it's not as wide of a deviation. Or master collecting clients' payments in a timely manner. Well, it's a wide variation if you look at the scope of the dark green graph, but it's not as wide as the others. So you can see how tightly some of these results have come in.
Yeah, exactly. Such as, Snapchat Weekly, of course, I would expect, I was surprised to see that factor come up, especially with such a small population there. But the Asian and Pacific Islanders, of course, that right there, it's the largest negative impact on hourly effective rate, but the error bar is also, pretty wide, a standard deviation. So again, just because if you feel like you're going in with a disadvantage, you can make these things work out to your advantage because others have, and that's why we get some of those big error bars because when it tries to fit everything to one factor, it's like, well, but there's this outlier.
Some of those still throw me. I mean, if I'm editing 0 to 10 hours per week, I can make more per hour of the work I'm doing than if I'm doing 10 to 20. And then if I'm using Hindenburg, I'm paid even more. I don't know. And 5+ more clients, I guess it all relates.
I get it though. So if I got 5 or more clients, I'm getting paid more per hour. I get that, and I've learned that I wouldn't say I get more value out of the podcasting industry, so I'm taking on more clients. I get that. Whether the cause effect relationship is reversed, whatever, I get the fact that it has an additive effect. Hindenburg, it's as we've said, it's the one DAW that was built around spoken voice and not so much music. And I think because of that, the Hindenburg editors, they know how to articulate their craft into the spoken voice format, of podcasts. And because of that, maybe they can quote, higher prices and get the work done in the same amount of time.
Yeah.
Those that edit, 0 to 10 and 10 to 20, they're taking on the clients that they want, the clients that pay them what they're worth. They're not taking on clients that say, oh, I'm helping you out by hiring you. Yeah, you never want to take on a client like that.
Carrie wants to know, or she thinks it'd be interesting to compare a country's median income versus rates. I think that'd be a great discussion for the Yetis to have on a mastermind show. And then let me go ahead and bring this in, because what we can do is offer everybody, if you want to look at the, oh, I can't do it while we're doing this. Doggone it. Maybe I can. Let me look at this thing here. There we go. QR code in the top left corner. If you want to download these slides, you can just scan that QR code. And if you're actually watching on your phone, you can't use the QR code, I'll get you a URL here a little bit later. We're almost finished with the slides, so it won't be too long before we can get that URL to you.
Yeah. Carrie brings up an interesting point. Like last year, when there was some deviation, some fluctuation around the country-specific rates, this year there wasn't as much. And again, the regression wasn't as tight this year as it was in years past because, I know we all like seeing this. The past factors should be a guide to future insight. You charge what you want. And this is basically the 144 data points, price versus time to edit. And that line there is the hourly effective rate, the average of everything, not the regression, but the average. So it's about the $63 per hour. So if you're on the top side of that, that's the side to be on. You don't want to be on the negative side of that. And it turns out, because I didn't pull any data off of here. I didn't pull any data points. So for example, we've got one person that's charging $500 to do a job, and they edit an hour of audio in 1 hour. So their effectively hourly rate is $500 an hour. And we've got somebody else that was charging at the very top there $1,000 per. There we go. Yeah, just move this. $1,000, and they take 4 hours to do the work. It's $250 an hour. I probably could have cut those data points out and got a little bit tighter around what separates all these, but again, this is a guide. I didn't want to start cutting data points, because at what point do you stop? I mean, there's a statistical answer to that, but I think with the time that we had and the data we had, we did a pretty good job with this. So
might be good as a second comparison of all this, at least just to take out with, I know that with Rob Walsh will, for the Libsyn's, the feed podcast, they give out stats, and once a month they'll put out the stats for percentage and numbers of downloads and stuff like that. And he'll take out the median, he'll take out the top 3% and anybody who's got 3 or less downloads. So if we took out those outliers, we could see more of a deeper dive into the people in the middle. And that might give us some more things to talk about and think about, because there's so many variables in. Let's go back to this chart. There's so many variables in this chart, and actually the tornado chart that was on here on the page before. So many variables. I mean, what do you decide to do more and less of in order to charge more, other than just raising your rates, of course?
Right.
So many variables.
Well, to me, it's not so much, hey, if I do this, I get paid more, or if I do this, I get paid less. It gives us something to challenge our perception of reality and ask why. Why do those people make more? How can I embody that to make more, or how can I eliminate the causal factor of that's making those less? So, for example, my belief around those that edit 0 to 10 or 10 to 20, they're taking on the best clients for them, and they're just doing the amount of work needed, or maybe a little bit more, but they're just working with the clients that they want to work with by all the clients that come in. And again, maybe the cause effect relationship is different. Maybe if your rate is really low, you're slammed 40 hours a week. But yeah, just things to think about. And I think it's looking at the survey data, especially those that did the survey, because they know where they stack up here. and they will have the opportunity to know how they stack up across their 143 other peers that took the survey. So those that take the survey actually have an unfair advantage of learning the most. I mean, that being said, the other 98% of the podcast editing community that did take the survey still has something to benefit from this information.
I think that was the conclusion of the slides, was it not?
It was, except we've got something special to announce.
We've got a couple questions. I want to let's get into the questions real quick because to clarify for a Facebook user, the per hour that we've been comparing is it's been Mark, you're gonna have to explain it, but it's a per hour that you have earned based on the factors.
Yeah. So what Steve asked in his survey is like, hey, how much would you charge to edit 60 minutes of audio to do basic noise reduction and mix it down to an MP3? So that's what Steve asked. And some people said, oh, I would charge $25 for that. Or, oh, I would charge $1,000 for that. And then Steve, his second question was, how long would it take you to do that work? Some people spent an hour. Some people spent 10 hours to do that work. And what we found this year and in years past, the easiest thing to predict is if we take the amount you charge and divide it by the amount that you take to do the work, what we call the hourly effective rate is the easiest thing to predict, because the price and the time to do the work have other factors. And that's why we put the hourglasses and the dollar signs next to some things, because like they were, positive or minus, but if we would dig into it deeper, it's like, well, it's because these people are faster or these people charge more. Hopefully that answered your question. Steve, you're on mute.
Thank you. And the only variable I don't think we can account for in that is the quality of work, because you might have somebody who just rushes through it, doesn't do as thorough of a job as somebody who's spending. I know, like Brian Insringer will spend at least a half an hour doing audio repair before the editing ever begins. So that's something that we'll have to try and figure out in the future. But hopefully, we're all getting better at the skills that we're developing as we're doing more.
I think that deserves a loop back applause. That's Brian. It's his third shout out in this live stream. So yeah,
sorry, I closed it.
That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah,
it's all the great work that Brian's doing.
Yep. So then we can go back to.
Oh, you want to go back to?
Here we go.
Here we go.
Our special offer, because we like to educate people on how to make more and become more proficient.
It's what we do.
Podcast Editor Academy. We're going to be doing this. Mark convinced me that what we need to do is offer the first 45 days of the Podcast Editor Academy for $1.
$1. $1. Because honestly, Steve, what this does is we've shown people the survey results for 2022, and we want everyone the opportunity to get better for 2023. And essentially what this does is this pushes off the regular billing cycle for 2023. I mean, we've got the client growth roadmaps and everything else in there. So, 45 days for $1, get in, check it out. If it doesn't work for you, of course, cancel. If not, we welcome you to stay. And we think once you get in and see what's in there, you'll probably stick around.
Yeah, 45 days. It'll take you that long to get through the roadmaps, which will so it'll get you to be more proficient as a business owner, business runner, and as an editor, providing services to podcasters.
Yeah, that was something new that we introduced. In fact, it was the first time we didn't really shut the Academy down. We closed the doors. So Academy members could still get in, but there was no other sign-up. So we did a number of things, including those client growth roadmaps. So whether you are trying to get your first client or trying to get your first 5 clients or grow to 10 and beyond, we've got a roadmap of all sorts of courses, modules, assets, resources, things like Steve's new editor board and how to get placed on that. Lots of things for the client growth roadmaps.
Yep, sales scripts. Tomorrow we have office hours. Yeah,
that's right. In less than 24 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. So $1 for 45 days. The first 45 days is $1, and then you stay with us. Then you can go to one of the 2 membership levels that we have. It's I mean, what could we do other than give it away for free? But we're going to charge you $1. It's going to cost you something to get in there. And it'll take you into the new year. So the first invoice that you get would be January. I mean,
Yep.
really. Yep. This offer is only good until the end of November.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Thanks for bringing it up, Steve. So there's probably 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, to take advantage of this offer that we're doing right now to get essentially Podcast Editor Academy to try it out for $1, and then have your first regular billing cycle in 2023.
Yeah, no coupon code needed. Just go and click the button. That's where you'll get the offer right there on the front page.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put a link in the chat so everybody's got a link right there as well as they see it on their screen. So the podcasteditoracademy.com is where you can go to sign up for that. Thank you all for joining us tonight. This has been a blast. I love doing these surveys. Well, I shouldn't say I love doing these surveys because really it's Mark. Mark is the one doing the survey. I get the survey out there. I try to get people to fill it out. He's the one who takes all those numbers and crunches them and puts out all this data. Which, oh, by the way, we've got to give people the opportunity to. Here, I'm going to put this. Oh, sorry, I just took out your thing.
No, it's okay.
The QR code. Question. Oh, we can't see the QR code from here. Let me get this right. I've been working in StreamYard on how to do this right. There we go. Thank you. Okay. The QR code in the top corner, or if you want to go to the landing page where we have this survey live streaming right now.
There we go.
There's also a button down there where you can download the slides. Now, it's going to say join the newsletter. If you're already on the newsletter, don't worry that it's going to mess something up. You're not going to get double the newsletter emails. If you're already subscribed, it doesn't do anything, except may update your name if you change your name or something like that. So don't worry if you're going to get doubled the newsletter. Just go there. You click that blue button. If you get on the newsletter, then you'll be able to get the download of the slides that Marcus presented tonight and be able to dig through them.
Definitely. And if you have an account on Podcast Editor Academy, when you log in, you obviously don't need to join a newsletter. That button is just going to be a straight download button, so you can download this and pin it up and say, "Ooh, I don't want to be like that," or I do want to offer. I do want to offer that, or think about what it does to have those. Ooh, man, talky.
Are you sweating from all the talking?
Well, this is almost like a keynote, but with new information. This is a lot for me, being an introvert. Doing a podcast interview is one thing where people are asking you questions and then I try to respond in 60 seconds or less. But yeah, this is a bit much for me. I see we got some great questions in here. So you want to hit some more questions?
There were questions?
Yeah. So for example, no, thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Oh, by the way, Steve did put a free form text area in the survey. I can't see who you are, but there's a lot of people that were thanking us for doing this again this year, and so glad to see that people are thanking us now. So Sandy asked a question: do editors generally raise rates for existing clients yearly? I don't know, and that might be a good survey question. I can tell you from personal experience, I sometimes early 2020. Before somebody ate a bat. So January 2020, I had one client that wanted to lower rates. And like, oh yes, I'm ready to lower rates. And then I took the things off my scope that I didn't like doing. So my hourly effective rate actually doubled. And I think they got a 20% discount on what they were paying. Funny thing, a couple years later, now because of all this cool AI software, I can offer those resources and more, and then charge what I was more 2 years ago. So, but I'm just one data point. So that's not much of a survey just for me. How about you, Steve? Do you increase your rates?
Well, I want to start by saying this is a question that gets asked, I don't want to say frequently, but maybe once every few months in the Academy, or I'm sorry, in the Podcast Editors Club Facebook group. So there are discussions on this, and there are opinions both ways. But for the most part, I think the question she's saying, because she's stating yearly, it's like a defined period of time. Then a lot of people say yes, they do, but maybe not as a specified amount of time. For instance, I have not raised my rates on some of my clients in a long time, or I've had clients for 3 or 4 years. I've only raised it once. So there's reasons for that. It's a give and take relationship too, because some of these people I have one client that I've known since 2017, and he gave me 3 new clients last year. So actually this year. I'm not going to raise his rates. He's like my lead generation machine, so I'm almost paying him by not raising my rates on it. But I'd say in general, most people do, or they should, if especially with the times these days with inflation and everything like that. Plus, we can see editors are getting paid more, so maybe they have been raising the rates over the past year or two.
Here's another great question. Do you have a breakdown on number of editors who charge hourly versus per episode? So we did not ask in the survey, how do you charge? But what we found, and Steve, let me know if you disagree with this statement, that people typically don't charge off of what they work. Like, oh, hey, I put 10 hours into this, so you owe me for 10 hours of work. No, people typically charge per episode. And a lot of people, and that's what a lot of contracts are around, is scoping out what is an episode. Is that one person 30 minutes? Is it a panel of 5 people for 10 hours? And that's where, scoping an episode really comes down to it. Would you agree, Steve?
Yeah. And Graham, that's a great question. It also comes up once in a while in the Podcast Editors Club. Good discussions happen there about these things. So, and I'm sure the reason why these questions are being asked is because people are thinking, should I be doing the same? Am I missing out by not raising my rates every year? Should I charge hourly versus per episode because I get more money? Of course, the survey data, it'd be nice to know if people who are making more are doing one or the other. We don't have that data. And really, there's so many variables. How can you say one would affect your pay rate versus another until you know what you can do yourself? I know that I would make more money hourly if I were to charge hourly, but I'm not charging hourly. I'm charging by the episode, because there's so many different things that I do to get the episode ready. I spend more time than it would if I just charged for the episode. Sounds a little backwards sometimes, but if you lived in my shoes, you know what I'm talking about. Thank you, Sandy.
Yep. And I think she's although you did have a great response to that, to Graham's question. I think that's to Sandy's question earlier for.
But we can see that her comment was made over a minute ago. So yes,
yeah.
It was for you.
Yeah. Do editors generally raise rates? Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And inside the Podcast Editor Academy, we've got scripts that will help you to communicate to your clients that it's time to increase your rate, what you're compensated for. Virginia Elder is one of the members in the Academy. And I remember last year she came in the club and she just did this glowing testimony that she took the script, made it her own, and it worked. And she raised rates, and it was right about the time when she was going to go full time, and she's been full time now and loving every minute of it. So she's also in my niche, so she's my competition, which is kind of interesting. But it's just the coolest thing when you can say somebody's used a tool and it worked for them and it helped them get paid more and become full-time podcast editor, copywriter. She's doing a bunch of those things. It's a lot of fun for her.
Yeah, and there's different ways of getting paid as well. Of course, there's the financial gain, but we also have scripts for referrals. Like, hey, if you really like the work I'm doing, could you write me a testimonial, or do you have anybody you could refer me to? So, or hey, you need to pay me more money. So we got different scripts for all those. So I know sometimes it's hard for us to kind of break out of that qualitatively, in that what is an intimate relationship of editing somebody's raw words before it hits the public, and we feel like we have this intimate relationship with them. And how do we breach that intimate relationship with the money or with the conversations as dirty as money?
Yeah.
But we like living indoors and eating food. So the sales scripts really comes in handy with that.
Yep. Facebook user says our scripts are great too.
I'll have to look to see who that was. Oh, that was you. Yeah.
Well, we've been on for more than an hour. Is that right?
We have, and this is the big live stream that we do every year with the survey results, because, well, one, it takes us a couple months to collect all the data, and then you give me a couple weeks to go through the data and create all the data points, and then try to have the math predict itself, and then we try to learn from what's happening and build these slides, and then present it to everybody within the podcasting industry. Again, this isn't just for Podcast Editor Academy. This is for everybody. This is for the Podcast Editors Club, as well as all the newsletters and everything that are linking to this or showing this video. Thank you for getting the word out. on what has become a very mature industry, and that is the industry of the independent podcast editor. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Love the independent
to
podcast
you
editor.
all.
Yep. And Sandy, it's super simple. Just go to podcasteditoracademy.com. Wait, we got all these things popping up. Let me take them off. Here we go.
Yeah, it's here.
It's
got
the
the banner
button.
too.
Yeah, it's the button that says join the academy, and it's going to offer you that deal straight up right off of the landing page. You can go there and sign up, because that's where anybody can go sign up at any time. And we are currently only offering $1 for 45 days. Can you even work around that? I don't think you can get around that. Can you, Mark? I think it's you click on it and it gives you the first 45 days.
So so if you go to the homepage, Podcast Editor Academy, we put this in there this morning. Put a code that's built into the button that's good through November. So whether you want the quarterly membership, which renews every 3 months, or the annual membership, which renews every year, but essentially you get 3 months free, you can pick either one of those, and you get the first 45 days for $1. And then it reoccurs billing at its normal price. And when you click that button, before you put your credit card information, oh, thank you, Steve. Yeah, if you show that and join, if you click that button there we go. That's the price. But if you click, go ahead and begin quarterly. It may say, because you're logged in, but it'll probably say something different for you. So you'll see that information in there with that crazy coupon code. So you'll get to see the payment terms before you even need to put in your information or credit card or whatever.
Yeah, I can now see how there'd be confusion, because either one of these two is going to give you that $1. Whoops, because I'm logged in, I can't do it that way. But I guess anyway, you saw it. Let me do it one more time, just for people to see. Click on Join the Academy, come down to the two options, pick the option you want to go to after the 45 days. And then you're going to see that the first 45 days is $1. And then the term, the quarterly or the annual will pop up after that. Not pop up, it'll be the term that you're on after the 45 days. Simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What else is there, Mark? I mean, we've talked about the survey results. Everybody's going to be able to get those slides by joining the newsletter. And even if you don't have, even if you're already on the newsletter, you'll be able to enter your information. It'll go take you right to the download. You can download the slides, and that way you'll be able to study them yourself to see what is it that I'm doing that might be impacting my hourly rate, and what can you do to change it so your hourly rate does go above the bar. All right. Well, shall we say goodbye?
Goodbye, Steve.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We really appreciate you being here today. I'm going to take us out with a little bit of... And we will see you in the club.